president urging states to deploy the National Guard to help calm the situation, threatening to send in the military himself if states refuse to take the actions that he deems necessary. But can President Trump actually do that?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. We're going to find out tonight. We are talking with Vincent Warren, Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Rights. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Tamsin.
So we want to ask you this, because when asked, after the president spoke, when asked about this, about New York, Governor Cuomo said he does not want to take the president's offer. Could the president send in troops anyway?
Well, it looks like the president can. I mean, one of the most important pieces, the general rule is that it's an act called the Posse Comitatus Act. It's been around for centuries, that generally prohibits troops, military, from performing local law enforcement actions. And we want to have that rule in place because it would allow the president to essentially, take over the country by force if the president could do that all by himself. There are some statutory exceptions, meaning that there's some laws that Congress has passed that give the president a bit more authority. And one of those laws is the Insurrection Act of 1807. And normally, the president would need the governor's permission to be able to move forward federal or other troops in a state. But the Insurrection Act is and can be read to say that the president can either do it on behalf of having a governor asking for help, or doing it on his own based upon his own particular view. So one of the places that that's been used in the relatively recent past is during the Rodney King Rebellion, where the governor of California asked President Bush for support, and President Bush sent in local Marines. But that was a particularized state, a particularized city, and there was a lot of activity going on. This is the first time that we're looking at the president doing something for around the entire country. There seems to be no limit as to where he wants to be doing this if the governors don't want. So that's a problem.
Well, so I want to get your take on this because, I think we all heard the president. We heard his speech. We heard how he said it, not just what he said, but how he said it. We've heard what he was saying to governors earlier in the day, what he said to the country. I mean, I'm curious what your reaction is as an expert on the Constitution and constitutional law. What's your thought about what the president's saying?
I was very troubled by the whole thing. And one of the pieces that I was troubled by was the use of really hyper-military language with respect to how to deal with what's happening now. So we have to be clear that, number one, there was a black man that was murdered. It was not the first person. There's a history of this, and people in America, black, white, and otherwise, are extremely angry about this. Thing number two is that there are protests. There have been tremendous amounts of violence from the police. There are some protesters that are looting. It is a genuine problem. But now what we're talking about is bringing in the military. What the president was talking about was bringing in the military to, quote unquote, dominate the war field. And to talk about an American political landscape as a war framework to be dominated is really, really problematic, whether you're a constitutional expert or not. We should really be clear that if you solve the underlying racial problems in the United States, we won't have these types of situations. These are not people who are out there just looking for a fight for the most part. These are mostly people that are really, really angry about the way black people are treated by the police. And so the answer to that is not dropping big bombs in the United States in order to get peace. The answer to that is reforming the police, moving people to a different state so that we don't have these problems to begin with.
Vincent, thank you so much. We could probably go on all night, and I'm sure we're going to have more questions in the days to come, but I appreciate you joining us and clearing things up for us tonight.
Thanks, Corey and Tamsin. Very much appreciate it.